Well, hello there. I am exhausted. You take a week off to get a bunch of things done, and then you come back, and all of a sudden, it's just everything has to be done. And North Texas, I've lived here my entire life, except for a few years when I was in East Texas. North Texas is gonna have to figure out what season it is, because I think we're in the middle of last. I think it's last winter. Like it goes winter, there's false winter, then it goes back to fall, then it goes to winter, then it goes to fake spring, then it goes to second winter, then it goes to not quite yet spring, and then it goes, and we're in the middle of last winter. It is nuts, and my allergies cannot take it anymore. I'm gonna need North Texas to figure out what it wants to do right now. I know at some point it'll make up its mind. It's just gonna be hot for like ever, but I can deal with the heat. I need something consistent here. Anyway, so let's say howdy to everyone who's in the chat. We've got Cheese Freak Ginger Snap, Gene Hudson, MH1953, Cindy Finn, and looks like everything for the moment. Scrolling down, y'all have been talking. Susan Robertson is also here. All right, good. Nice. Yeah, I mean, trust me, I know Louisiana. There's a reason I stay out of Louisiana. And let me touch on a couple of comments real quick. I was just trying to read through them. Starting with Cheese Free Ginger Snap. All I'm gonna say is that Nick has returned from overseas. That's all I can say for now. And what I will say is, I think there's a lot of good people doing good work out there right now, and maybe those other guys are going to come back. Maybe something new will happen. We don't know yet. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Gene, I see your sister Ruth. Okay, yeah, I imagine she is having a hard time with that. And Cindy, I see that I see you're under some weight, but I don't see anything saying what that is specifically, which is perfectly fine. And oh, Gene, I'm glad that you were able to find a gravestone that was made of pink granite. I'm glad to hear that. Image 1953, we will definitely do that. Okay. Understood, Cindy. So yeah, we're just gonna do a hangout tonight. With everything that's going on, particularly with just a lot of things going on personally, but then also out there in the world. I couldn't do it today. Honestly, mad isn't the right word. I'll just say it that way. Like, mad isn't the word. I don't know what the word is though for what I'm feeling right now. Frustration also isn't the right word. And like disappointment isn't the right word, but it's this family, it's this emotion that's this just, I don't know. I don't have words at the moment. Gene, I know, and I'm very sorry to hear it. I mean, there's no other thing you can be right now. Image 1953, maybe that is the word, but it still doesn't feel like it encapsulates everything. I mean, that may be the closest, but there's just so many more emotions tied up in what I'm feeling, and I'm trying to decide how hard I need to go. Gene, that's a great question. That's a real good question. Yeah, I don't know. I fiercely disgusted. Maybe disgusted is right. I just need to throw on adjectives. Maybe that's the thing. It's like, and I guess if I think too hard about any one emotion, I go down a completely different trail of thoughts. Like, hold on. Let me try one thing real quick. It may be that the audio isn't defaulting where it should. No, it's defaulting. Hold on. Yeah, that's the right one. And let me do that. Yeah. Hold on. Realtek. Oh, yeah, Realtek. Yeah, that should be it. And echo cancellation is off. Is anyone else hearing an echo? Oh, okay. I just saw, okay, I see. Yeah, we're all good. Hey, Bet Mom. Phone's blowing up. Luckily, I think this is small enough. I don't think I don't think we'll get kicked off. I don't think YouTube cares. That's one of the reasons I like this channel being small, so we can know everyone, talk about things. Hey, Titan. Yeah, and it's. I'm gonna start with the big one, and then, well, they're all big. That's the problem. And so here's the problem. Everything is interconnected. I think that's my problem. I'm having 100 different. Hey, Lisa Lou. I'm having 100 different emotions, all about different things, but they're all intersecting, and that's creating this emotion I don't have words for. Let's start with probably the biggest one that seems the most disconnected, but I think really does tie into a lot of other things. The stupid Ukrainian lab thing, right? Like, when I first saw it's like when the first things initially came out, I'm like, well, they're not striking in the same cities where these labs are, right? Like, they just weren't. And so I'm like, okay, like, I wasn't like, well, there aren't labs in Ukraine. It didn't look like necessarily that was their primary goal, right? That's it, as far as the Russians were concerned. By the way, if we get kicked off, then we know YouTube's listening. So yeah, I just kind of looked at it. I was like, okay. Oh, hey, Bigfoot. Michigan Rob. So when I first saw that, I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem to have that big of a deal, right? As far as playing into the war itself, the invasion itself. So I was like, okay, but that was as far as it went. I didn't It wasn't like I was like, oh, there are clearly no labs there. I just sort of assumed. I'm like, there probably are, right? And of course, the government did what the government always does, lies about it, right? And then we get Marco Rubio, and I don't even want to talk about him because I'm like, so he during it's like, why didn't he say, look, to hell with these time restrictions? I'm going to ask these questions right now because she just admitted something big. So he asked the question, do we have or does Ukraine have bioweapons? Her answer is very telling. I mean, frighteningly telling. Because she didn't say no at all. Like that should be the first when she goes, well, what they have, that's your first, like that's a yes. And what she goes on to explain is that, and what other people have uncovered through reporting, we funded and built biolabs that have the ability to work on, these level 2 and it was level 1 and level 2 biolabs. Those are the ones we built and we were funding, and they were working on agents and diseases that are considered bioweapons, straight up. Like, that's what they are. And here's the problem. It was like, well, they weren't really creating they weren't creating biological weapons. And see, here's my problem. They have them. Some of these weapons, like anthrax, or some of these diseases, like anthrax, smallpox, which has popped up recently. These diseases by themselves are weapons. If you have them, you have a bioweapon. And here's the thing that really stood out in my head was that they were concerned about Russia getting their hands on this research. Okay. I know not everyone was alive during the Cold War, right? I get that. I was only around for the last part of it, 80s. But I do recall the government of Russia, of the Soviet Union specifically, being pretty darn good with that kind of stuff. So, what in the world could Ukraine, I think it's only a little bit bigger than the state of Texas. Like, it is the poorest country in Europe. What's it doing with 4,000 biolabs? And then 2 of the ones we helped build and fund, what kind of research could they possibly be doing if they were worried that Putin could get his hands on it? Like, that's a real question. And that's not a question that should be like, that doesn't make sense. There's nothing about that sentence that makes sense. And it just is one more thing. Just one more thing. Because again, in no way am I on Putin's side on this. I think his actions are reprehensible. I think, absolutely. That's not a question here. But I am going to have to ask this, because it does seem like our politicians went out of their way to make this happen. It feels like this is the byproduct of 25 years of bad policy in regards to Russia. And then the last few years, so one thing everyone keeps saying when they're like, this has nothing to do with the Ukraine joining the EU, with Ukraine, not the Ukraine joining Russia or joining the EU or NATO. That has nothing to do with it, because what about Turkey? What about these other nations? And it's like, guys, did you actually not look at a map? It's called the Carpathian Mountains. What the Russians don't want are people who have been very antagonistic towards Russia for the last 30 years. Again, Soviet Union falls. Why aren't we helping them? And it's like there's an obvious obvious way this could have gone. And it's like, you take an enemy, you turn him into a friend. And even if not a friend, at least an ally. But it was Putin himself said, why are you making us an enemy? This doesn't make sense to him. It's like they need him to be the bad guy. They need Russia to be the bad guy. And it's like, okay, our politicians missed this, but it seems so obvious that this could have happened. Russia did not need to be our enemy. It does seem like this whole thing was created, and it does look like NATO was forcing this issue because, again, Carpathian Mountains. Russia doesn't want an antagonistic force like NATO being able to stage weapons and arms on the other side of the Carpathian Mountains, because they have to get, because if you get around once you've gotten around the Carpathian Mountains, you can do anything you want to them. That's it. So yeah, that is a real concern that he should have. Also, with what went on in Crimea, like, there's a lot of, like, this whole thing is messed up. Again, not saying he's in the right, but he is. But there seems to be a lot of stuff that was happening on our side that didn't seem that looks like people who were. It looked like they were people, and again, the labs are just one more thing. It looked like a lot of people were playing with fire knowingly to create this, and people are dying because of it. The people who were put in charge, who were put in places to preserve peace, to work out equitable solutions to problems so that people don't don't have conflict, we're going out of their way to create a conflict, and it's these innocent people on all sides who are suffering for it. It's the common man who will always suffer. It is, and it's hard to say. How do you say it's not deliberate anymore? That's my problem. How can you say this wasn't a deliberate act? That our leaders didn't force this thing to occur. It seems like there was ways for this not to have happened, and at every opportunity, we did the wrong thing. NATO did the wrong thing. The EU did the wrong thing. And at some point, I got to ask, if all your mistakes go one direction, maybe it's because you want to be there. And so now we got hospitals getting bombed. We have families being destroyed. We have nations at war. And now, of course, the people here in our country who are not going to go to war, whose kids aren't going to go to war, they're the ones who are going to be like, yes, we need to get into this war with a nuclear power. And of course, they're doing stuff that we don't even know. That's the problem. That's the other thing. There's all kinds of cyber and technological attacks that are going on right now that we don't even know about. But they're going to push this thing into war. And why? What's even worse is we're going to commit our forces. We're going to escalate this, and China is going to take Taiwan. That's a bad day when that happens. And we're going to use the excuse of, well, there was nothing we could do. We were busy with Russia. And again, it kind of looks like this is all by design. These people who are, and it's on both sides. Both sides, they don't care. They don't care that what we're paying for gas. They don't care how much our food goes up because they're always going to have it. They don't care if you lose your job. They don't care if your business shuts down. They don't care. In fact, they, to a point, want that to happen because it gives them more power. That's all it is. And it goes back to, it's Deuteronomy 32, right? It is the spirits on the nations that are active and in control of all things. And if you're not actively a Christian, if you're not fighting the influence of that spirit, you are under it. You're going to do these things. which is exactly where I'm going in Image 1953. I've said this channel for a while now. We are under the delusion. The delusion's already come. We're seeing it. But here's the thing. It's not like you don't fall for the delusion because you're just randomly. It's because you don't love the truth. Which brings me back to the Deuteronomy 32 spirits that are active and doing things right now. The problem is, look at the church. The mainstream church has fallen for all of this. It is just as delusional as the secular world, and that's what breaks my heart. We are supposed to be the conscience of this country. We're supposed to be able to call out good and evil. We're supposed to be able to say, hey, this is not the way this is supposed to go. We're supposed to be the voice of the kingdom against these spirits. And it's not. Just not. It's lunatics like me at art desks on small channels. That's it. That's all that's left. None of these none of these mainstream churches, big churches, they're all involved. There may be one or two here and there, but they are the minority. Yes, Gene, we can definitely do that as well. And it's so MH 1953, you bring up a great point. Like, this is revival. There's a reason I chose my words the other day very carefully. That this is a time of separating the wheat and the tares. It is what we are seeing are those who are actually there for the kingdom and those who are there for power. Those who want praise from men. We are seeing that. Hey, Cindy, if they are, then good. But they are vastly in the minority. They are vastly in the minority. But I think what we are seeing is that separation, the wheat and the tares. Because the thing is, the reason you can't tell wheat from tares at the beginning when it would be easy to pull them out is that they look the same, right? It's only when they're mature that you can tell what's wheat and what's a tare. I think the implication there is there has to be maturity, meaning we're coming to the end of the season. It is, I think it's just one more sign of where we are in the timeline. Again, we're in Revelation 12 verses 5a, in between 5a and 5b. That's it. That's where we are. So it is coming to the end of the season. This is what we're going to see more of. I think I think the part of that bothers me is the fact that these are supposed to be the people who know better. They are supposed to be the ones who care. And it seems like all of these people, I keep seeing all these people running around, like, just talking about how much they care about people, and they're doing things that are clearly, obviously designed to hurt people. Like, that's it. Like, they're not even trying to pretend. And that frustrates me and breaks my heart, because it's like, you're supposed to be the ones who know better. And it does call a lot of what we've done as American Christians into question. I was thinking back to one of the hangouts we did with Donnie Chase a while back. One of the things that got brought up that we didn't get a chance to explore was the idea that I made the comment, I think there are a lot of pastors we've the idea of the pastor being the teacher is, I think wrong. That it is that we have a lot of people with, hey Brunson, um, with they're pastors, but we ask them to be teachers as well. And I think we looked at those giftings, right? Um, pastor, teacher, prophet. We didn't understand them. Not really. We looked at it and said, "Oh, it must be that the teachers are very charismatic, and they're the ones who are going to talk to large numbers of people, and pastors they can still." And prophet is this other weird thing that's about fortune telling. We went over just a few weeks ago, right? The primary thing about or one of the primary roles of the prophet is to speak God's truth, is to bring people closer to God. It is not about foretelling the future. In fact, one of the big elements in that verse or in that section of scripture that really stood out to me. Hey, Mary H, it's perfectly okay. Is the fact that it says, even if someone tells the future correctly, but takes you away from God, stone him. Because it begs the question, it's like, well, hold on. How did these people foretell the future if they weren't of God? So it got my mind thinking on a lot of this stuff. Like, again, you knew where I was last year, right? Like, how do we have all of these prophets get it just so absolutely wrong? And people kept saying things like, well, because it wasn't like these were just random people. These were people who had gotten a lot of things right in the past. It's like, but how'd they get it wrong? There were a lot of explanations that was like, well, not everyone shoots 100%, and that's the wrong answer. And everyone who I heard that from, like, you're gone. Like, I don't care anything you say anymore. But then there were other, like, well, maybe they got it right and that he actually won, but it's just that he was stolen. I'm like, no. That's hemming and hawing. Like, you're justifying things here. I need an answer here. Well, so Gene, there is a good point to that. So Gene made the comment, maybe it's about the timing that was misunderstood. Kim Clement, I think is a good one. Like him, I'm holding out as I want to see how things pan out. But one of the things Kim Clement said was he just said two. He didn't say back to back. A lot of these men came out and said they were back to back, that they were, they didn't, they just said, and a lot of them even said, yeah, he's going in this year. So, but then it got me thinking. It's like, well, what if telling the future isn't necessarily the element? Maybe there are people who they go around talking about being prophets because they see the future, but maybe that's an ability they naturally have. What if again? So allow me to be a little. This is going to sound like I'm like this is an ego thing. It's not, but it's a question I'm really starting to play with, and I think it ties into this whole thing, right? Like, why couldn't I get when before 2017, I was sending my books out to everybody, right? Trying to get on all these shows. This is again years ago. And I'm like, why won't anyone return my calls? Why is it everyone that they have on are the people who are just saying crazy things on either side, right? And I couldn't wrap my brain around it. And then it started to occur to me just this year, last few months, going through this and seeing how the large churches have gone, seeing how the denominations have gone, seeing how a lot of these big name people have gone. And it made me wonder if not everyone, I think a lot of people are very well-meaning. I think they're all, I'm not going to sit here and say who is and is not sincere, but it does beg the question: how corrupt is this whole thing? And I don't mean like people on these Christian shows are sitting around, twisting their mustaches, being like, "Mwahaha," like it's like some cloakroom filled with smoke and demons or anything like that, but rather that they've been so sold out to the system that they're under the influence of these other spirits. Are they sold out so much that in order to get out there, to be big, requires you, in many ways, to either be something that will turn people astray, and not astray necessarily as away from God, but just away from usefulness, which means, and that makes a lot, and that starts becoming, again, I don't want to believe in conspiracies. I don't think this would be a conspiracy. It would just be the fact that they're just listening to these other spirits, all of them. That bothers me. Okay, again, for a guy who deals with demons and stuff like that all day, well, not all day, frequently. I consider this one of the more surreal sentences I've ever said. So John Cooper of Skillet and Elisa Childers, who is formerly of Zoe Girl. If you're a Christian listening to music in the late 90s, early 2000s, you heard them. They have recently come out with their own podcasts, and they're great, actually. But they've very much come against this progressive Christianity, and because of their stance against progressive Christianity, and I think I've talked about this before my vacation. They came under fire from Phil Vischer of Veggie Tales. Like Larry the Cucumber is coming after this, right? Are coming after them for their stance against progressivism, this progressive Christian, movement that is definitely not Christian, right? It just ain't. And it was like there was this one thing, and it's really just stuck in my head. And it was one of John Cooper's responses, because I think it helped solidify sort of this whole thing, right? Was he was commenting on Phil Vischer's condemnation of Skillet, because one of the things that John Cooper and Skillet sing about a lot is the armor of God, being at war with the world. And John Cooper said, and I was like, wow, when I was like, okay, I heard that. He said, well, maybe Phil Vischer doesn't need God a lot because he doesn't say anything the world would oppose. And I'm like, that one cuts deep. But and that's one of those things that maybe it's really got me thinking about this whole thing. Has the American church been so compromised because we wanted peace with the world? And that's what we wanted. We liked the prosperity. We liked the peace. We wanted respect. And that's why we threw everything out. The supernatural, the thing, these strong moral stances. Like, it was like everyone's really, don't get me wrong, yes, we should stand against abortion, but there's so many other things we that they should be calling out, but they don't. Like, although now it's even hard there are lots of churches that don't even oppose abortion anymore. But it's like, there's a few that are easy, but then the other harder ones, they just don't want to. They don't even talk about sin anymore. Titan, I think you're right. Don't cast your pearls before swine. Maybe that even meant the church. I used to have this phrase that I for years lived by, which is all truth is meant for all people. And I firmly believed that for a long time. And I had to edit it because I did this a few years ago because I realized that all truth should be accessible to all people, but not all men are meant for all truth. I think the problem is beyond the ability to understand or the ability to there are people who just they haven't earned it. They don't want to earn it. They reject truth. In which case, the idea of don't casting the church or the pearls before swine. It's like if that's the principle, it's like, well, then yeah, I think that applies in the church as well. I think we have to realize there are people in the church. And again, let me be very specific. When I say church, I mean the physical church system. I do not mean the body of the actual Holy Spirit filled body of Christ. That's what I'm so just to be very specific, I am not talking about the actual church. I'm talking about the church system. And so this is, hold on, I saw something that Cindy, let me see if, so I scroll up here for a second. Okay, so it's not part of, okay. Okay. Cindy, I absolutely understand. I think so to Titan or to Batmom's question, so it sounds like the church is the problem, but the church isn't the problem. The problem is always the people, because there's no such thing as a perfect system. There are only people. There are systems that work better, absolutely, but you can't avoid the human problem. At some point along the way, we lost faith with the actual text of the Bible, and we wanted peace with the world. And the problem is, I don't think this is a unique thing to our society or to our time. I think this is always a problem. The church there's always people in the church who want peace with the world. And to Titan's point, yes, I think if the church had followed the model of First Corinthians, there would be accountability. And so again, something personal here. I'm still trying to find. I would like to find a church here that I could join with, because as wonderful as this is, this cannot be in it. We can't just stay on the internet. There have to be living, breathing people in our lives that we interact with. It has to be that way. That's how we are. This is a wonderful tool. It really is. And I'm glad that we have it. But it cannot replace. And I was thinking about and so we're looking, asking around, trying to look for things. But the more problems I see, the harder it is to find people with whom that we can be together, right? Titan, so let me say this. I don't think that the 7 churches are the 7 ages. I know people say, oh, it's the 7 ages of the church. I don't buy that. I do think, however, that every church symbolizes a type of church that does exist, right? Meaning, I think at any point of time, you're going to find one of those churches. And I think that is where we are. So, yeah, I mean, as far as most American churches, yeah, I think we need to go back to our first love. I'm questioning whether or not Jesus was ever really loved by this church. That's how far I think we are. because he said, it's there's the idea that if in the scriptures is the idea that you will follow his law. Now, again, I don't think that means we have to become first century Jews, right? Unfortunately, that's where the Hebraic roots movement went too far, right? They took it too literally. They didn't look at the writings of the first century church where they even said that's not for for people who are Gentiles, things like that. Like it's too far. But it does beg the question, right? Do we really love Christ enough to stand for him, for his ways, for his teachings? And again, I said this on sirupapers. This is why I do what I do. All of these people who are afraid to talk about these things, they don't really believe in the supernatural. They just don't. And my problem is, if you don't believe in the supernatural, then how do you believe in the Bible? The Bible is an inherently supernatural book. The entire point of it is that supernatural. And if you don't buy into the supernatural, then do you actually believe the Bible? In Titan, I think we are in the great falling away. I've never believed the great falling away was just one event. I think the problem is a lot of these things are multiple events. They're things that happen over decades, centuries, but we assume it's like the movies, right? Like it's like in the movies we always depict these things, and it's just like, oh, this thing happened and this thing happened, and we're done. Nah, it's not how it works. I do think there's an event coming, though, that will solidify. It will be the closing of the trap, and I think we may be in. I think we're in that point, right? In fact, this is what we were talking about on the show last night, right? The Ukrainian UFO thing, or the spaceship, where they're calling it a miracle of God on CBN. Again, it's CBN's reporting that I'm questioning, because they like to put the word spaceship in there. Like I said last night, I don't know that this event even happened, right? I don't know that. I don't know that it didn't happen. And I don't know that it wasn't God, right? I'm certainly not going to say that God didn't do that. Like I said, I do think angels use conveyances. Maybe that was an angel descending in whatever conveyances they have, and throwing out, lightning to destroy these. Maybe that's exactly what that was. But or maybe it wasn't. I don't know what it was. What I do know is the reporting uses the word spaceship an awful lot, and then miracle of God connected. And I find that very troubling, because I do believe that we are coming to the point where the one world government is going to start showing up, right? And I do think that the lie that will cause the unification of all these world religions is going to be ancient astronaut theory, is going to be the idea that these aliens and UFOs are coming from light years away, and that the Vulcans are coming from, I'm sorry, the Palladians are coming from Alpha Centauri, and they're going to show up and they're going to fix everything, and that all the world's religions are based on our contact with them. And I'm like, that's the lie. That is the lie. That's what's going to happen. So if that's what's going to happen, how do you set them up? Well, you have movies like The Avengers, where we are told, or Thor specifically, where they actually quote Arthur C. Clarke: any sufficiently advanced technology will appear as magic to a primitive society. They flat out said that the Teutonic gods are actually just space aliens. That Thor is a space alien. That there's no magic. That's the entire premise of the Marvel universe now, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you make movies like that. Then you eventually get people in the religious world to combine those two thoughts. Say, well, yeah, God's, of course there can be space aliens. God is an infinite God. There can be all kinds of aliens running around out there. All right. And then you get them to do that, to start connecting the idea of spaceships and miracles of God. I think that's what we're seeing. I think we are seeing this setup for the great falling away. And again, I've said this, I've told this story. I've spoken to numerous pastors. I'm not calling anyone out. I'm calling everyone out on this one. I've spoken with numerous pastors who absolutely agree with me that the ancient astronaut theory, that's the new world religion. That's the next thing that's coming. But they don't want to talk about it. They don't. They don't want to address ancient astronaut theory because they're worried that their church will be known as the church that believes in UFOs. I'm here to tell you, any pastor that does not talk about this stuff, and I'm not saying it has to be every Sunday, I'm just saying at least once. Can you at least mention it? If you're not teaching your flock what ancient astronaut theory is and how and why it, what the lies are going to be and how to debunk them, how to know that the Bible is true. If you're not doing that, you are selling out your church. You are selling out all of your people, because I guarantee you haven't talked to them. If you haven't taught them, one day, I doubt it'll be tomorrow, but some between now and definitely 2033. That's, if I have to put my money on it, between now and 2033 is the date. But sometime between now and then, we're going to have something, could be as dramatic as a mile-long spacecraft hovering over New York City, or it could be as subtle as the Pope walking out and making an announcement saying, yeah, humanity was created by alien intervention, and all of the world's religions are influenced and inspired by contact with these extraterrestrial brethren. It may be that subtle. It may even be as subtle as the United States government just flat out saying that that's what it is. I don't know what it's going to be. But that day's going to come between now and probably 2033. I'm not saying I'm a prophet. This is just me, but this is me guessing here. All right. On that day, every movie makes it like, oh, everyone's going to run to the church. No, they're not. No, they're not. They were just told, either by a little green man or by the Pope or by some dude in a suit and a tie, right? Maybe a white lab coat, because that's what we do now. He's going to be very professional. It's going to be it'll be very much like Fauci. And all of these people sitting in these pews for decades are going to, in years and decades, are going to hear this, and they're going to be told, hey, your religion is just a misunderstood contact with aliens. And they've been watching the Marvel movies for the last 30 years. Well, I guess it's only 10 years, but I mean, I'm looking forward to the future, right? Last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they're going to have been watching all of these movies like Ice Age, and they're going to, they've been around. They're going to accept it. They just are. And it's because their pastor sold them out, because they don't want conflict with the world. Yes, to the point. The Catholic Church has a number of telescopes, but one of them is is called the Lucifer telescope. Yes, it's insane. It really is. Now, that being said, I also don't believe that Lucifer is the name of Satan, or his angelic name. I think it's the prophetic name of the Antichrist. But that's a whole different kettle of fish. I'll probably do a video on that for Siru. So yeah, I'm a lot of things right now, and I do think if the church had the spine it was supposed to have had, if it had spoken the truth, if it had stood for the truth, if it didn't say, I don't care if you think it's crazy that there are angels and demons running around, that there are all kinds of evil spirits in the world that influence the affairs of men. I don't care if you do think that's crazy. That's the way it is. If we confronted the supernatural, if we had done the things that we were supposed to have done, I'm not saying the world would be perfect. But I think if we had been that kind of church, politicians' feet would have been held to the fire. I think things would be a lot less corrupt. I think if we actually believed the Bible, we'd have a lot fewer racial problems. I think our government would be a lot would feel because there would be people of conscience in there. They would want to do what is right for everyone instead of their own pocketbooks. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be wars or that Russia wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that it's entirely possible that it could have been avoided. I think people of good intent who are willing to do the right thing. I think it's entirely possible this whole conflict could have been avoided. All this needless death and suffering, all avoidable. And I think that's why I have so many of these emotions. I can't figure out what to do with them, because it's like we're supposed to be this thing, right? We are supposed to be the hands and feet of God. We are supposed to represent Jesus Christ in this world. And what we've represented is mammon. All the people that we've been listening to, that we've followed, that they sold us out so they could build a bigger building, so they could get invited to graduations and to speak in lecture halls. And there are people dying because of it. There are souls going to be lost because of it. I'm going to have to pause here. I have to pause here. Let's remember Sharon Guy. Let's remember Catherine in our prayers. Let us remember Cindy, Finn. I want to make certain I'm terrible with names. I just want to make certain I didn't say the wrong name. There are so many comments in the chats. It's just, you just want to make certain you don't see the wrong name and say it. Let's remember Cindy right now. Let's remember Catherine and Sharon. Let's remember Alan, our friend in Nairobi. And let's pray for strength to do the right thing ourselves. It may be that we need to start doing, maybe it isn't churches that we need to look at. Maybe it's home churches we need to look at. I don't know. I don't have the answers here. I do believe y'all, in each one of your situations, I think the Spirit will give you the wisdom to what to do, though. Also, I was going to mention this earlier, but unfortunately I got on a bit of a tear, and I apologize. So this Sunday, I will also be out of town. it is, we have a wedding to go to, so I will not be around here on Sunday. So next week we'll start back up with Hebrews 3, and we'll meet back on Sundays. But don't worry, we'll do like a big long hangout. I'll find somebody cool. We'll do like a Saturday hangout at some point in the near future. But yeah, we got to pray. We have to be more dedicated to the text. We have to be more dedicated to living Christian lives, to courage. And I don't know what that looks like in everyone's life in particular. I think we need to listen to the Spirit guide us in that way. But I do believe that no matter how bad it gets, that having no, it's okay, Titan. Actually, Titan, send me some questions by email, because I think there's some questions that you have that maybe we should probably do them as a study unto themselves. Yeah, everything will go back to normal next week. This, like I said, it's going to be a busy time, and in the near future, I'm definitely going to be out for a lot of weekends, doing conferences and things. But yeah, Titan, just send me an email, and we can do some things. You always have great questions. But yeah, this Sunday I'll be out, but it'll be fine. Like I said, I think this is a time when I think those of us who recognize, I think people are seeing how screwed up everything is. It can't hide anymore. And it's becoming obvious who's who. And so let me say this, with all the emotions I have right now, like I said, I can't tell if I'm frustrated or mad or say, the one thing I am not is hopeless. In fact, I am more optimistic about a lot of things, because you can't fix a problem you can't see. We are seeing who's who and what's what. For that reason, I'm optimistic. I am not necessarily optimistic that the country can be saved. What does that even mean? But I am optimistic that we can be made into the kind of people that need to be made, that we have to be made into to please God. That's what I'm optimistic about. That we are being made into the people that God wants us to become. I think this time is doing that. And for that, I'm very optimistic. And on that note, I think it's not just that we would be in our becoming who we need to be, seeing who's who. I do think that the will of God will be done even more. And that's optimistic, and that makes me optimistic as well. Guys, again, Cindy, Sharon, Catherine, Alan, let's keep them in our prayers. Particularly Cindy, Sharon, and Catherine. They're all going through a lot of things right now. Let's pray for the hand of God to be on them. And again, same with Alan. Even if you have $10, it'll help him, because it's going to mean a lot more there, at least for the time being. Since the way things are going, who knows? But for the time being, it will. Love y'all. We're going to keep doing this. I think we're going to find our way. And I think that way is going to look a little different for everyone, but that's okay. I think we're going to find ourselves being the light in our area. So that's why I'm optimistic. So y'all be good. Let's keep one another in prayer, and let's always be optimistic about this. Not necessarily for wealth or for prosperity or even peace, but victory in the Lord. I think we can always say that will happen. It may not look the way we want it to, but it will always happen. I'll see y'all later.